Nate, thank you so much for being a part of the podcast and taking time out of your busy day, busy schedule, busy life to join us. I really appreciate it, man.
Dude, it's my pleasure. Anytime. It's always exciting to get a message from you saying you want to chat. So
I love it. Yeah. So championship leadership, let's just get right into it. What do you think of, what comes to mind for you when you hear that phrase?
championship leadership. I mean, in a general sense, I feel like championship leadership is like the type of leadership that takes you to the top of the top. You know, championship is like the game. It's the phase of the career or the aspiration of anybody who ventures into anything that's competitive. You want to be in the championship, and if you're the leader of the champions, man, that means you're working harder than anybody. You're doing the stuff that nobody else is willing to do. You're focused in a way that nobody else is focused, and you set an example for everybody to follow. So,
yeah. I love that. That's great. Tell those that are listening, watching, a little bit of a background on you and what you do, because I definitely look to you as a leader inside of your arena.
Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And the definition I just gave will apply somehow to the area in which I try to be a leader. My goal in life is to help. The best way to say it is I want to rid the world of mediocre love. I want to help as many people as possible to have passionate, electric, dynamic marriages that are just like the kind of thing that makes you excited to wake up in the morning and curl up next to each other at the end of the night. A couple of years ago, I was very single and very bad at relationships, man. I knew I always wanted to be married. I knew I wanted to be a husband one day, but when I was dating, man, my relationships never lasted more than a couple of months. And I realized that every single one of those relationships had something in common. One, that it was short-lived, and two, I was a part of it. And so I realized that if I was going to be the type of husband that I wanted to be, which is like a 5-star husband, if I was going to be a husband, I didn't want my wife ever waking up in the morning and being like, yeah, I guess it's cool. I'm okay being married to Nate. I wanted her to be like, oh my gosh, I'm married to Nate freaking Bagley. I'm the luckiest woman on the planet. Like, I didn't want her going out with her friends, complaining about me and, you know, talking about what a drag it is to have an extra child in the household that she had to take care of. You know, a giant man toddler. I wanted to be an awesome husband. So when I was still dating, I decided to quit my job and try and figure out, like, really dedicate myself to understanding what I needed to do to become an awesome husband. So I spent the better part of a year traveling around the country, interviewing couples who were madly in love with each other to figure out what they did that separated their relationship from everybody else who was just ordinary. And that kind of set this snowball rolling down the mountain. And I started talking to some of the world's top experts. I started going through trainings. I started getting educated. I started reading books. And I started recording all these conversations, putting them online for other people to listen to. And I realized that other people had the same goal that I had. They were looking for answers. They wanted to know, how do I create an amazing marriage? How do I be an amazing wife or an incredible husband? And that's kind of how I ended up where I am today. Is now I feel like I'm kind of the mediator between the researchers, the experts, the academics, and then people who want this information. I go do all the research and talk to all these experts, and then hopefully translate the things that they're discovering, the science and the tools and the practices, and translate them in a really approachable way so that people can turn that knowledge into action.
Yeah, that's incredible. So you wanted to be an incredible husband and wanted to know what that would look like to do that. And that sets you off on this path that many would like, that very few would actually go on, right? Like,
yeah.
That to me is a true definition of being a leader is to, there's one thing to hope and wish and dream for something and to want something, and it's another to be like, yeah, there's no way in heck I'm going to go out and do what's required to figure that out. And you actually quit your job. Is that what you said?
Yeah. I had this idea for a long time to go do these interviews. And the idea would come, like the voice would just come and be like, you should go do this project. Like, you need to go find these answers. And then I'd put it off and put it off. And I pretend that I was doing it. I'd like go buy a microphone, or I'd secure a domain, and I'd try and convince myself that I was doing the thing. And finally, like there was a big space of time between I hadn't heard the voice in a while. And it came back one day when I was having a really miserable day at work. And I was working at a restaurant company, and this guy came in and he's like, man, you look like you're miserable. And I'm like, I am. I'm just having a rough time right now. And he's like, dude, at the end of the day, all we're doing is selling lunch and dinner. It's not that big of a deal. You shouldn't be so stressed out. And I was like, oh my gosh, is that what I'm doing with my life? I'm just selling people lunch and dinner. Like that's what I'm doing. And the voice came and it was like, go do the project. And I was like, I'm scared I'm never going to hear the voice again. I'm going to forget. And so the next day I got to work and I turned in my 2 weeks, and I sold everything that I owned that didn't fit inside my Mini Cooper. And then I started driving across the country, interviewing couples. And I just knew that like there wasn't any other time in my life that I would have the freedom and the opportunity to do this. And dude, the crazy thing is, it's weird. Every month or so I get a letter from somebody and they go, oh man, I love this project. I wanted to do the exact same thing. Tell me how to start, or what did you do? And I'm like, I just went out and did it. And I'm amazed, like dozens and dozens of people have told me I wanted to do something similar and they just didn't do it. And there's something special about,
that's so incredible, man. Seriously. Like
doing it.
Yeah, that's so incredible. You listened to the voice and you went and did it. And I mean, right there. And now you have all these people sending you messages. And how long ago was that?
It was like 5 or 6 years, 6 years ago.
6 years ago. You're still getting letters today. Like this is something that I thought about doing and I didn't, right? So let's speak to that. What's to listening to the voice, to making, like I call it decisive execution. Like it's one thing to hear the voice. It's another thing to take it and execute, like to do what you did, to go out and do it.
Yeah.
And literally like quit your job, pack up your vehicle, and you went across the country and you interviewed couples, right?
Yeah. Dude, couples from every walk of life, every background, like you name it, rich, poor, religious, non-religious, gay, straight. I interviewed a polygamous family. I interviewed a couple who's been in an arranged marriage. Like I've interviewed so many different kinds of people, and it's been an incredible experience hunting those people down and having those conversations. And I wouldn't have had that chance if I hadn't listened to the voice. And like there was all sorts of fear, like, oh, what about financially? How am I going to be able to provide for myself? And, what are people going to think about me? And what's going to happen to my career if I walk away right now when I'm on the precipice of like breaking into management and having all these really cool opportunities? And it's easy to compare yourself. I look around at some of the friends that I have, and I look at their families and their careers, and they're a few steps ahead of me because I took a break to go pursue this passion, this question, because I wanted answers. But man, I look at some people who went in blind, and they're struggling, man. They're struggling. They might have great positions at work, but they're not enjoying themselves. Or they might have been married and have kids, but their marriages suck. They're really struggling. And I'm so glad that I listened to the voice, because it gave me time to get crystal clear on what it is that I wanted and what I needed to do to get it. And I don't think people approach your marriage is the most important relationship in your life. Tony Robbins says all the time, the quality of your relationships is the quality of your life. And your closest and the relationship that has the biggest impact on you in your life is your marriage. And if you're not investing in it, and if you're not doing it right, man, you get 10 years down the road, 15 years down the road, 30 years down the road. And if you find yourself married to a stranger, or if you find yourself just in a miserable situation, it has an impact on every aspect of your life: financial, sexual, your work, your stress levels, your friendships, like your physical body. Everything is affected by that relationship. And I'm just blown away by how many people don't make it a priority. And I'm blown away by what a huge difference it makes if you do make it a priority.
Yeah.
It's crazy. You've experienced that. Like you've seen the transformation in your life when you flipped the switch and made your marriage the priority.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was just messaging, some of the clients that we have inside of Prosperity Revolution, and today sending a message of be very, how we do anything is how we do everything, and we are very particular in the language that we use, and we also need to be very diligent in the actions of the choices that we make, and do not be casual with your language, do not be casual with your decisions. And obviously getting married is one of the if not the biggest decision that you have to make. Do you find that there are a lot of men and women out there that do in a way take marriage casually, enter marriage casually?
Absolutely. I think most people do. I don't think most people truly understand what the potential that a married relationship really has. And if they understood the power that an incredible relationship could have on their own life, and not only that, but their community, the lives around them, they would not approach it with as much of a casual mindset. But I read this quote the other day. It was by David Schnarch, and it said something along the lines of, and I'm going to paraphrase because I'll probably slaughter it, but most of us get married for the wrong reasons. But as you stay married, you discover the right reasons for being married. And I don't think it's bad that people walk into it in a naive way, but I do think it's bad that when people start bumping into struggles, as every single couple does, that they turn and run, and they lose that opportunity to grow and discover really the power of a marriage, and the power of improving yourself, and the power of chipping away at the things that are holding you back from being your best self. Like, marriage is the ultimate personal growth machine. It exposes you. I don't know of any other I could say program or experience or relationship that will expose you more quickly and more frequently to your weaknesses emotionally, spiritually, physically, mentally than marriage. And confronting those weaknesses, some people hate it. And for me, I look at it every single day as an opportunity to become a better man. And when you change that perspective into, okay, how do I look at my struggles as, instead of looking at it as how I'm deficient, looking at it as how I have an opportunity to improve, man, all sorts of cool doors open up.
I love that. Yeah. The ultimate personal growth machine. It's so true. And let's if you don't mind, let's go back to that quest that you were on and traveling across the country. And who are did you run into some, what you would call real leaders, true leaders inside of when we're talking about inside of marriage?
Yeah.
Share some of those stories and what really, maybe what was the theme, if any, that really popped out to you amongst the ones that were true championship leaders inside of the marriages, and maybe those that weren't as much?
Yeah, I'll tell you about two couples that really had a huge impact on me. Every couple I interviewed had a big impact, but these two consistently stand out, and I think about them almost every single day. So the first is David and Gretchen Figge, who have become some of our nearest and dearest friends for me and my wife. And I remember I went to their house. They invited me over for dinner, and they insisted that we eat dinner before we had the interview. So I'm standing in the kitchen. Gretchen is cooking. David's kind of chatting with me, getting to know me a little bit. And David is just I could tell he's just in tune with his wife. He can tell when dinner's about ready to go. And he starts asking, he's like, just a second, Nate. He walks over to his wife and says, "Hey, babe, I can tell dinner's almost ready. Can I help with anything? What do you need? Can I set the table?" And she goes, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much. That would be so great. Would you mind setting the table?" And he goes, "Oh, it would be my pleasure. I love you so much." And he grabs the napkins and starts setting the table. And she's like, "Thank you so much, sweetheart. You're the best." And I'm sitting here listening to them talk, going, they were a little over the top, lovey-dovey, considerate, pleases and thank yous all over the place. And I'm like, this is kind of ridiculous. So we sit down for dinner, and we hadn't turned on the microphones yet, but I looked at David and Gretchen, and I'm like, I gotta ask, I don't want to be a jerk, but I'm here to interview you for your marriage. And I just need to know, is this how you guys always are? Or are you putting on a bit of a show for me because I'm watching you? And they called me out, man. This is the most embarrassed I've ever been. I was almost ashamed. David looks at me and says, Nate, early on in our marriage, we saw how other couples treated each other. And we noticed that some people treated their partner, they would treat complete strangers, like the teller at the bank or the checkout person at the grocery store. They would treat them with more kindness and respect than they would their own partner. And we made it a priority and a commitment at the very beginning of our marriage that our partner would always know that they are the most important and the most special person to us by how we talk to them and how we treated them. So we always use our pleases and thank yous. We always say, I love you. We're always polite and courteous. And we never say cruel things to each other. We're kind because we want our love to be reflected through our words and our actions. And I heard him say that and I just like blushed and I put my head in my hands and I'm like, I feel like such a fool that I could be so cynical and so jaded, even after having done hundreds of these interviews with these couples who were in love with each other, to see a couple who was kind and respectful to each other and think that it was a show. Like, it blew my mind. And I realized how easy it is to take the person that you love most in the world for granted and to treat them poorly and to speak to them like you wouldn't even speak to a complete stranger. And that was the moment where I committed to myself that I would treat my wife with kindness and respect, regardless of how hard my day was or how annoyed I was with her. I would always use my pleases and thank yous, and I would always try my hardest to be kind and to be encouraging and to be loving and not be snappy. And that was like a huge lesson for me. That was one couple that had a big impact on my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was crazy. That was kind of like what you're saying. Your words have power. You need to be so careful with your words and intentional with your words because they mean something. And I think it's easy to become casual in your most powerful relationship.
Well, yeah, you're telling that story and I'm thinking the same thing. Like, yeah, I mean, is this real? What are you guys putting on a show here? What's going on? And then to hear that actually that they decided that from the very beginning, because I would imagine you ran into a lot that had to go hit almost kind of the bottom, right? Before they
and dug themselves out.
And we're like, all right, this is not working for us. I mean, that's my experience. And I'm guessing that's probably more common for a lot of couples.
Yep.
You said you had another, that's an incredible, absolutely championship leadership inside of your marriage. I mean, that's on display and the ones that are doing it, it's like Michael Jordan inside of basketball. He's extremely talented, or a LeBron more than just about any other player out there in the world. And yet they are still putting the work in, continually showing up every day, doing the things that people don't see so that they can continue to stay on the top. It's hard.
Man. Daily focus on the fundamentals.
Yeah.
Daily focus. Like I remember hearing a story about Kobe Bryant. You've probably heard this, but he made the Olympic team and he was up at it was the first day where the Olympic team got together to practice and he shows up at 4 a.m. to the gym and he insists on getting 200 makes from free throw makes before anybody even shows up to practice. Yeah. And he just shoots and shoots and shoots because he wants to be perfect, He wants to be the guy who's better than everybody else. It's just crazy.
Yeah, it's incredible. But that's the type of focus. That's the type of habits that have to be there to keep you on top in any area of life. So I know you mentioned there was one other couple. I want to hear about this other couple that comes to mind.
So the other couple is Ty and Terry Schenzel. And Ty and Terry are from Omaha, Nebraska. And I learned 1,000 different lessons from Ty and Terry, but probably the most powerful one. I'll just try and give you an idea of how they were. Ty is a non-denominational Christian. Well, they were both non-denominational Christian, but he was a youth pastor. And he's just a super goofy guy, just totally madly in love with his wife, just thinks she's so sexy. And they would just goof off all the time. And they're the kind of people that, when we showed up to their house, we showed up at 9 o'clock in the evening and thinking that we would walk in, do the interview for an hour and leave. And we walk in, and the moment we walk through the door, hugging us and welcoming us to sit us down at the dining room table. We have a 45-minute conversation before we even start recording. We're at their house till like 1 a.m. You know, they're like giving us books and recommendations. You feel like you're their best friend right when you meet them. And it was really interesting, like talking to them about their progress through their marriage. And like one of the discoveries that they made early on, they had been married for about 10 years. They had 4 kids. They were spaced out like almost every 2 years. And they went to dinner with some of their best friends, the kind of best friends that you talk to about everything. And they're like, how's your marriage? And Terry said, oh, our marriage is good. And her friend says, how is your sex life? And she goes, well, it's not great, but everything else in our marriage is great. So I think we're okay. And her friend goes, I would argue that if you don't have a great sex life, you don't have a great marriage. They're connected. And that if you really truly want to have a great marriage, you have to be able to focus on every aspect of your marriage, including your sex life. And Terry had this like breakthrough. And she decided that even though she was exhausted and even though she was taking care of 4 kids at home while Ty was out working all day, and when he'd come home like ready to go, she would just be not in the mood and tired. She's like, this is important to my marriage. And she found a way to make a mental shift over time, an emotional shift. And she said that her goal was to make him the most satisfied man in the state. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so crazy. But it completely transformed their marriage. And she said when she started doing that Ty started putting on his, what he calls male lingerie, which was he made sure that every single day she felt cared for, that she felt validated, that she felt safe and protected, and just tried to make sure all of her emotional needs were met. And when she was showing up for him, he was showing up for her, which made her want to show up for him. And they got caught into the rare positive spiral instead of what so often happens to so many of us is the negative spiral. And I remember towards the end of our conversation, hearing Terry talk about their marriage. And I wrote down this quote. I just looked it up while you were talking a minute ago. And I want to read her words, word for word, about how she approached her marriage.
Yeah.
She said, at the end of Ty's life, I want him to be able to say, Terry was the greatest earthly blessing in my life, the best thing that ever happened to me, and that I'm a better man because of how she loved me. And that's the goal I live with every day. That's how I want to love this man. And I'm like,
holy cow.
Oh my gosh. Nate, can you imagine how the world would be if everybody woke up every single day with that mentality? I want to love my partner so much that at the end of their life, they think, man, you are the greatest earthly blessing to me, and I'm a better person because of how you loved me. Like if you woke up with that intention every single day, and everybody in your community or in your world woke up with that intention every day, man, it would change everything. Everything.
Yeah. So powerful. It would be a completely different world. I mean, I can't even begin to comprehend, but that is such a powerful statement, and I love it. And
they're on another level, man.
How are you? Yeah, that's kind of your mission, right? Or that's your mission. How are you going about that? How are you taking the steps to make that become a reality?
For myself or for everybody else?
For everyone.
Man, so I got a lot of resources out there. You know, I've got a podcast, I write a lot, and it wasn't until just recently that I realized that there was something missing in the relationship space. When I talk to people, when I talk to couples who want to have an extraordinary marriage, there's just not a great resource out there for them to know how to do that. Like most people don't realize that romantic love is kind of a skill that you develop over time. And most people learn that skill from their parents or from the people from the community they were raised in. And those skills by the time you're of age to get married are about 20 to 30 years out of date. And, and 2, most people have mediocre marriages. And so the skills that you have, if you want to be a champion of marriage, if you want to be a champion leader in your marriage, you got to train like a champion. You know, too many people think that an extraordinary marriage happens because of luck, and it doesn't. It happens because you take the necessary required actions every single day to create an extraordinary marriage. And so I looked at the resources that are out there, and one is therapy. Like you can go talk to a therapist or a coach, and that can be great for a lot of people, but for a lot of people refuse to go to therapy because they think it's an admission that their marriage is failing, or it's too expensive, or it's an inconvenience. The other option is to like read a marriage book. And as you know, books are great, but when you read a self-help book or a leadership book, how many of the things that you read do you actually implement in your life? There's definitely an obstacle there. Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
one, maybe two principles, for me at least, and for
Yeah,
most people that I
yeah.
talk to, actually get implemented. And if you really want a great marriage, you need to be able to take the knowledge that you have and turn it into action. So this big thing that I'm doing right now is called the 1% Club. And it's for people who want to focus on two things: having a marriage in the top 1% of all marriages, and two, are willing to improve 1% every single day to get there. And we set up these challenges, and every month you get a 1-week challenge, and we focus on one principle, and it's all about application. We don't bombard you with like hours and hours of knowledge or lectures. It's like a 5-minute little snippet of information every day with an action item, like go do this and invest in your marriage, go do this and invest in your marriage. We're trying to create those daily habits that help you improve over time. And the really cool thing that I'm really excited about that we have involved in this is that if you complete the challenges, you pay to enter the challenge, and if you complete the challenge, we pay you back.
Oh, wow.
So you're basically paying yourself. You're putting something at stake.
You're investing in yourself.
Yeah. So the frustrating thing that I think happens in a lot of marriages and where they go wrong is that we get married and we commit ourselves to this person, and we assume that they're going to be there no matter what, no matter how bad things get. And so when we're put in a position where we have to choose between investing in our marriage and investing in something else, we almost always choose something else because we just assume that the marriage is always going to be there. Like, oh, I have a work meeting, I'll just go to the work meeting instead of date night tonight. Or, oh, we have a kid's baseball game, we're just going to, or I'm really tired, I'm not going to have the conversation that I need to have with my husband or my wife tonight. And we put things off and put things off and put things off. And it's really hard for us to see the long-term consequences of putting something off today. But when you're investing every single month and you have the opportunity to earn money back, it turns the marathon of marriage that can be hard to understand the long-term consequences of not investing into something short-term. And if I don't invest this week, I lose money. But if I do invest, I gain money. So it's kind of like psychologically tricking yourself into focusing on today instead of focusing on 30 years down the road. Does that make sense?
Wow. Yeah. That's an incredible idea. I love it. And I want to join the 1% Club with my wife.
Heck yeah, man. It's awesome. I'm really stoked about it. So we're doing our first challenge this next month, the first month of August. And I'm really stoked about it.
I'm in, man. I am in for sure. I love that.
It's a training program. So
yeah. I mean, obviously, I'm a coach. I help men and women to get what they want, create the life that they want, that they haven't been able to create on their own, to see new possibilities for themselves that they can't see on their own. In what I do every single day, and investing in yourself and to create this life that you truly want, it's an important step. Because I remember when I came into marriage, you talked about it, like you just don't know what you don't know. You're coming in so blind, so naive. I guess what the only education you really have is the fairy tale Disney movies that you watch all your life that tell you that it's going to be great and that you're going to find the woman or the man of your dreams, and you're going to get married, you're going to have kids, and it's going to be awesome.
Yep. And Hollywood that tells you if it doesn't work out, you can just walk away. No big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're not equipped, right? Yeah, you're not, and you don't want to go to therapy. I don't want to go to therapy because, again, right. It's like an admission that even though my marriage probably does suck, like that it's actually admitting that it sucks.
Dude, most dudes don't want to go to therapy, and most dudes don't want to read a relationship book. That's just, it's like 90 to 95% of relationship books are bought and read by women. Men don't want to invest that way.
Right.
But but you got to find some way to invest, or like if you don't do things differently, you get the same results, man. And if you're not happy with the way that your marriage is right now, or you just want it to be, maybe you're satisfied. Here's the scariest trap of marriage is mediocrity.
Yeah, I love David Goggins, and
he's
like, you have to get to the point in your life where you detest mediocrity, and so many people do not. Just are okay, comfortable, complacent, and just have settled into, like you said, mediocrity.
Yeah, it's uncomfortable, but it's not uncomfortable enough that it forces you to want to change. You're like in this really interesting status quo where it's like, I know we could be like having more sex or laughing more or, being more affectionate, going on more adventures, chasing our dreams. But the way that we are maybe making more money, doing some really cool stuff together, being really intentional, but that requires a little bit of work and I'm tired. And I just don't want to. But the thing is a mediocre marriage is just like one really bad argument or one explosion or a couple of bad days away from a miserable marriage.
Or
The
divorce.
best
Yeah.
antidote to a mediocre marriage is an extraordinary marriage.
Yeah.
If you don't want a miserable marriage, like mediocre is just a slip, just a teeny slip away from miserable. But if you're in extraordinary, you never have to worry about miserable being a possibility.
And does extraordinary marriage, does that mean perfect?
No, there's no such thing as perfect.
I love it.
But extraordinary marriages means you got someone in your corner. You know that no matter how, like I know that no matter how hard things get in my life, my wife is going to have my back, and I got hers. She
Yeah.
could come to me with a horrible confession, or with a big problem, or with a massive challenge, or with a complaint. Something that she sees in me that I need to change. And I know, like, we've made agreements in our marriage that when we come to each other with bad news, if my partner ever comes to me with bad news, I receive it with grace and with an open mind and with kindness. So she's never scared to come to me with a secret, and vice versa. And we have hard conversations. We have arguments and disagreements, but man, like our arguments last 5 minutes. Maybe if it's a tough one, it lasts 15 to 20 minutes. But I've had to go for a walk around the block once or twice. And by the time I get back, my wife's calling me on the phone and she's just like, I'm sorry. And I'm like, I'm sorry too. We shouldn't have said those words. Let's talk about how we can like avoid having this conversation in the future. And man, like, that's a great marriage to me, man. You just know you got the person you're never worried about. You're both the person who's rushing to make sure that the other person is okay. And to make sure that the other person's world is good. John Gottman, who's one of the top relationship researchers on the planet, says the best definition of marriage, if you were to summarize 40 years of marriage research down to one sentence, it's when you're hurting, baby, the world stops and I listen.
I love that.
Like
Wow.
that is marriage. When you're hurting, the world stops and I'm here for you.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so true. Talk to me. So inside of what we do, inside of Prosperity Revolution, we're always thinking about how can I communicate the message to our clients in a way so that it would land with them in such a powerful way that they would see the possibility for themselves to go out and then take action. So how do you communicate your message, your vision, your mission to get these other couples, these marriages that are in mediocrity, and how do you get them to move towards extraordinary?
Yeah, it starts with inspiration. You hear about couples like Ty and Terry. You hear about couples like David and Gretchen. And I've got, hundreds of episodes of couples like these people. And once you realize that there's nothing special about these people, and all it took for them to have the type of marriage that they have is for them to decide this is what we want and then do the work to get it. Man, it is so accessible and so available to everybody. I think that if most people put in 3% effort in the right area of their life, that everything could change for them. And when you realize how within grasp an incredible relationship is, there's nothing that should stop you. Like there literally is nothing that should be able to stop you from having it. It is so much closer than you think it is if you just do the right things every single day. If you just get the right habits, the right rituals, the actions that matter, if you start implementing those into your life on a daily basis, it's the small things done over time that have the greatest impact. It's the little notes that you write on the mirror. It's the pleases and thank yous in the kitchen. It's the passionate kiss every time you come home from work. It's the text in the middle of the day that says, "Hey, I'm thinking about you." It's the flowers that you bring home once a week, and just to make your wife happy, or it's making your husband's favorite dinner. It's being flirty, even if you're feeling gross, or leaning into the discomfort of somebody when your partner is initiating sex, like leaning into it and being like, okay, I don't feel like it now, but maybe if we get the ball rolling, I'll feel like it. It's being willing to have a hard conversation, and every week say things like, what can I do to be a better partner for you next week? What did we do well this week? What can we do better? It's being willing to admit, hey, I'm struggling with managing finances. I need to invest in myself in this area to get past whatever emotional block I've got going on. It's like, it's all these little things. It's just little conversations of recognizing your weakness and having a desire to do better, and being willing to put in the work regardless of whether or not it's rewarded with praise and affirmation. You just do it because that's who you want to be. So once you catch that vision and once you realize how within grasp it is, I think you can become unstoppable, and you can be easy. A 5-star husband, 5-star wife, have a top 1% marriage. Like it's accessible to everybody if you just choose it.
So what are some ways that you are inspiring others to do that?
Well, hopefully through the podcast, I produce some events, like we do date nights out here, and we're looking to doing a cross-country tour to get people a little peek and some a glimpse and some training into how that works. And like the 1% Club is one, and going on podcasts like this is a great way to inspire them. And I just, man, every person I talk to, I try and figure out what's going on in your marriage, and I give them some pointers of how to be better. Like that's, if I could give, I don't know, I think a really great piece of advice, maybe I've never given this before, but this could be a really interesting thing. Like if you're listening to this show right now and you have a close friend or a family member that you talk to on a regular basis, make this part of your everyday conversation or your weekly conversation. How's your marriage? Ask, be concerned, create a community of people who want to have extraordinary marriages, and encourage each other to be awesome husbands and wives. Like I think one of the most destructive things to a lot of marriages right now is when people get together with their friends or family, they bag on their partner. The ball and chain, the giant man toddler, oh, my husband's so stupid. Oh, my wife is such a nag. Oh, she never does anything right. Oh, he never does anything right. I can't trust him to take care of the kids. Like we say these words about our partners, and we listen to our friends say those words, and behavior is contagious. You spend time around people who are negative, you become negative. You spend time around people who are critical, you become critical. But if you can start to create a community of people who are positive, uplifting, and who have the goal to have an awesome marriage, and you're checking in with them on a regular basis, it can make a world of difference.
Yeah, that's an incredible point that you make, because let's be real, when you are around other couples, when you're living your life, the reality is that the marriages are not extraordinary, and yet it's like we all just kind of ignore the elephant in the room, right? Versus if you were, like you said, like just have conversation around it. How powerful would that be to open the conversation and to just be like, hey, yeah, we don't have an amazing marriage, but like we want to, and just to open the conversation around friends, and to, number one, because there's always a power, right? In our programs, it's one of the number one things we say. There is power in you coming into a group of people from across the country and realizing that you are not alone, that you are not unique, that there are others out there with the same issues and struggles. And that's what we're talking about here, right? There's these group of friends that have marriages, and the reality is that none of them, I shouldn't say none, but there's a real good likelihood that their marriage isn't what they would like it to be. But yet the conversation will never be had, and the conversation has to be had in order to create that.
Yeah. I think we're scared to have the conversation because we're scared we'll lose our power. You're scared if somebody knows your weakness, or if somebody sees that you're not as good as you might appear to be, that you lose power. But I remember, have you ever heard the phrase, he who loves least has the most power in a relationship? No. I remember hearing that as a teenager, like, as long as the person who's invested the most has the most to lose. And that means they have the least control over the relationship, because the person who cares the least can end it at any point and destroy the other person.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to this couple the Gastons in Georgia, and they'd been married for 60 years. And I said, what advice would you have for somebody who's just starting out? And she said, don't be afraid to be the one who loves the most. Don't be afraid to put it all on the line. Like, how can you have the best marriage that you can have? How can you have a 5-star, like, epic, amazing marriage if you're not willing to go all in?
Yeah.
And I think about that in a community. If you're holding back and you're too scared to talk about something, like you're avoiding, you're not getting access to the power that comes from community. And not only that, but you might be hurting somebody else from getting access to your experience. And so there's something powerful about having that capacity to be vulnerable and share. And I think it actually has the opposite effect on people than what they're afraid of. It's empowering.
That's what I was just thinking. I was like, it's opposite, right? Yeah, for sure. But the stories that we have inside of our head tells us that is true, man, right?
That lizard brain is like, you're vulnerable. Don't say it.
Yeah, don't do it. What would they think? What would they do? Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yeah, but that's why people like yourself, Nate, that are so important in, being a leader in what you're doing, because you are willing to put yourself out there. You are willing to take a stand for not only your marriage, but other people's marriages as well, because you know what is possible and how important it is and how incredible and what kind of an impact and a difference that would make if you were able to impact just a small percentage of people, and how that would just affect the world.
Yeah.
And man, I love it. So when's the book coming out? That's what I want to hear. Like, you have, man, seriously, like, got all these amazing insights and quotes, and like just the experience that you had of going across the country and meeting with these people all from all kinds of different backgrounds and religions and places. It's just incredible. When is the book coming out?
It's a good question. I don't have a date yet, but I've got several thousand words written. I just need to put them together and publish it.
It's
ready to pull the lever.
One of the many things on your plate of things to do. It
is in my top three priorities for 2019.
Awesome.
So 2018 was kind of, I was working a full-time job for a while when we got married and kind of taking it easy. And in January, my wife was like, you need to go for this, go for it. And so this year was about getting things up and running and getting some revenue and getting the 1% club going and getting the events going. And now that has momentum, its book is right there on the horizon.
I love it. Can't wait.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Let's talk real quick here as we begin to kind of maybe wrap this up. Is, as a leader, we talked about the one couple where they were like, we just made a decision from the very beginning that this is how we were going to operate. We were not going to be the ones that were going to treat the gas station attendant better than we do our own spouse. Yeah. And but for many, there is a point or a moment in our life where we can either go this to the left or to the right. And obviously you are here today on this podcast and doing what you're doing because you didn't go left, you went right. But is there a moment for you that's sticking out right now that's just like, man, I could have very easily just said, screw this. I've created the marriage that I wanted, that I've gotten what I've wanted. You might not go out and impact like you are currently as a championship leader inside of the space that you hold in relationships and marriages. But is there a moment where you almost, you got to this point, maybe continued to hit this wall and didn't feel like you're going to make the breakthrough to truly impact like you want to? Yeah. Yeah. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah. There's a moment that is very crystal clear for me. So a couple of years back, after I had started the podcast and it was getting kind of popular, people were listening. I started a company with my best friend called Unbox Love, and it's still around. We sold it a while back, but at the time, the idea behind it is it was a subscription box, and we would put together a date in a box for couples, and they would get it delivered to their doorstep. They could open it up, and it had like conversation starters and activities that they could do in or around their home, and it was like an affordable solution, especially for couples with kids who didn't have a lot of time or money for a babysitter. And it was a lot of the idea of it really excited me. And within a few months of starting the business and having customers, I quickly realized that it was not what I wanted to be doing. I liked the impact that it had on the world, but I'm not a guy who is great with operations or analytics or processes. And I was spending almost all of my day doing that kind of stuff, packaging, shipping, ordering, logistics, just all that kind of stuff. At the same time that I was starting to get weighed down with that, I had to kind of sacrifice the creative aspect of everything because it was consuming so much of my time and energy. And I was engaged to be married to this girl who had been my best friend for 5 years. And I was so in love with her, but things were just not working out. And it was obvious that the relationship was kind of stuck. And there were some things that I think both she and I needed to address that we hadn't addressed personally, that made it so that the relationship wasn't workable. And so not only was I stressed out entrepreneurially and I wasn't like taking home hardly any money, I was living in my parents' basement. I was 30 years old, and I was supposed to be a relationship expert, but my relationship was failing miserably, to the point where we ended up calling off our marriage and our engagement. And so here I remember at one point, just like right after I called off the wedding, just laying in the bathtub with the shower running over me, just like sobbing in a pile of my own snot for like an hour, and just dry heaving like air, just trying to breathe, and just thinking what a failure I was, like here I am, this guy who's on a quest for love, and I can't even convince my best friend to marry me. I can't even make that work. And the business that I had wasn't growing the way it needed to grow in order for me to be successful. And the podcast I had kind of given up on, and I was exhausted and financially in a place where I just didn't want to be. And I was broken, man. I felt like I was at the very pit, and I was just ready to give up on everything. Like, not life, but
Yeah.
I just wanted to I really did feel like I wanted to lay down and die. I didn't want to kill myself, but I did want to be dead. And I remember just little by little healing from that breakup, and getting into the position where I could sell off the business to somebody who could manage it better, and getting rid of the things that were weighing me down, surrounding myself with people I loved. And I made friends with my wife, and we were hanging out a lot, my now wife, and we were hanging out a lot. And I remember sitting down with her one evening and telling her, I had kind of put everything on the back burner, but telling her what my vision was and why I had started doing everything that I had done, and she, like, her eye really wide, and she's like, that sounds amazing. Like, that is so cool that you have this dream to rid the world of mediocre love and lower the divorce rate and make an impact on the world. And I realized that that even though I didn't believe in me, there were other people out there who needed the stuff that I had been doing. And it kind of resurrected my desire to keep moving forward. It was basically just like one or two people having hope and saying, hey, I miss you. Like, hey, this is important. I need it. And I realized that having that impact on one life was enough for me to continue going forward. And so I put my big boy shoes back on, and I stopped having a pity party for myself. And I'm like, all right, let's do this. And we got busy, and now I'm back in the game, like, stronger than ever and more prepared than ever and more trained than ever and more ready than ever to have an impact on this world. And I'm so glad that I didn't give up, man. Like, I desperately wanted to give up. And the fact that I was able to get through that breakup and find the woman of my dreams who's an even better fit for me than anybody I've ever been with, and to be able to resurrect my business in a way that suits me and that gets me excited to wake up every morning, and that makes me enough money to provide for my family and live an awesome, powerful life, and the ability to impact that thousands. Like, I wrote a blog post a couple of weeks ago, and it got picked up by a couple really big, over 500,000 people read it. And I'm like, I just touched more than 500,000 lives. This is freaking awesome.
So incredible, man.
So I just feel like I'm banging on all cylinders now. And if I had given up, if I had gone left instead of right, if I had chosen the give up path instead of the press forward path, not only would I not be the same man I am today, but I'm realizing now that there are thousands, hundreds of thousands, even millions of people whose lives I can have and will touch because I didn't choose to give up. And that's the thing that gets me up every morning, is realizing that there's somebody out there who needs something that I've got.
Yeah, and thank you for doing that. Thank you for taking that stand for yourself and continuing to press forward. Because, like you said, had you not, the impact that you've already made would not have happened. And there's power in you, kind of like you said, kind of reaching that pit, that bottom for yourself, and going through that. Because now it's just all part of your story, and it just makes you stronger, and it allows you to be with others that are in similar spaces and be like, hey, like, I know I've been there, and here's what's possible, and I can help you if you are open to that. So powerful story, and thank you for sharing that. Really appreciate that. How can people, so the definition of leadership, one of the very simplest and definitions that I've seen and that I've heard, it was out of John Maxwell's book. Let's see, I got it right here. Developing the Leader Within You 2.0. So it's his newest version, but it talks about it's the ability to create a following, or to have people that will follow you. Like, a leader is someone that shows up in a way that causes others to want to follow them. So how can we follow you on your path and what you're doing inside of relationships, and the message that you have and the impact that you're making? Yeah. For those that are watching, listening, how can they follow you and your message?
Best way to follow me is to get on my email list. I send all of my very best stuff to people who are on my email list. Facebook, Twitter, like those, Instagram, those things are great, but like I don't have control over them. Yeah. Like, Facebook can change their algorithm or whatever, and I can lose contact with all the people who opted in to follow me. But email, like, I get direct access to your inbox, and I don't spam people, but I love sending awesome emails to people and having them chat back with me. So I actually set up, I think you can go to I sent you a link, and people can go to a special link, and I set up a gift. It's over $100 value for people who listen to this show. They can go and download, and just need to give me their email address, and I'll send it to them for free. So I believe it's loveyoumentary.com/ I don't know. I sent you the link. So maybe you can just include it in the show notes.
Yeah, it'll be in the show notes for sure.
Cool.
And so they can just click that, join your list, and follow you that way. That'd be great.
And I'll hopefully hook them up with something that will the goal is to give them the first challenge for free for the 1% Club.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Really appreciate the time, Nate. Thank you so much. I know you're a busy man.
I appreciate the invite.
For what you're doing. You are doing a holy work for sure. And it is one that is much needed. And so thank you. Really
back at you, brother. Love you, man.
Love you too.